I am now, so stop swearing. So that everybody's on the same page. So, you know, as I said, you've been through some pretty ordinary inductions. You've seen some pretty good inductions. Pick out the eyes out of what you reckon's the best and what could work for you as if you're the OHS person, and put those in place. Like, you might have different levels of inductions, the same as last time we talked about the different levels of contractors. You know, the level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 contractors. You might want to have different levels of induction for those people. So if people are coming on your side as a level 1 induction, in a level 1 contractor, or a level 4, or the lowest level, if you like, they only do a really basic induction and leave it at that. Whereas, you know, the higher level contractors get a far more detailed induction. It's not a bad process. It makes it a bit easy because most of the contractors you have come on site generally are lower level ones. You know, you'll have the bigger ones, but you deal with them at the time. So it's not a bad concept to go down, rather than just having a broad brush approach. And, you know, as I spoke about the Shepparton City Council, the Moora City Council one is really quite pathetic, where you basically just agree to everything. Do you agree to comply with this rule? Yes. Do you agree to comply with this rule? Yes. I mean, it means nothing. All you do is sit there, wait for the time out and click the yes button so you can move on to the next question. As it says at the bottom there, they need to be really, really well informed on your OHS policies and processes, because technically they are employees. So when you're inducting them, you really need to be thinking about that. When you're inducting your contractors, you are inducting employees into your business, because there is that same legal obligation on for them as what there are for your workers. So you need to be quite specific and detailed. So if you have a go at activities 2 and 2B and 2C now, and I'll mute myself so I can still hear you.
Huh? Okay, so we've got to do an induction briefing.
Have you had a look at activity 2B? Trev?
Sorry, mate, what'd you say?
Have you had a look at activity 2B?
No, I haven't. I haven't got it in front of me.
Yeah.
It says you've got to do a briefing?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what we might do is I'll schedule a night with you, and we'll get everyone to do an induction briefing. It doesn't give a specific time, does it?
No.
No. Look, to do this, to make it effective, think about when you're developing it, that you're actually developing as if I was being inducted into your business, or all of us were being inducted to your business.
Yeah.
So, Nick, you do it for your business. Luke, Ryan, Ben, Wayne, Jeff,
yeah,
we've been coming into your business. So that'll give you a bit of a heads up. You might be able to use something you've already got in place.
Yeah, I did one the other day.
Yeah.
So what are you saying? We're just going to make up an induction?
Yeah, just an induction briefing. So you don't have to do a PowerPoint like that. I mean, it's a bit hard to do that on this anyway.
Yeah.
But certainly you could just give us a bit of a rundown. The only thing I would encourage you to do in doing your briefing is just have a series of maybe 3 or 4 questions at the end to see what our retention's like. I would encourage you to do that, because look, that's what you would normally do with an induction anyway, because you're really got to test that people are retaining the knowledge. You just can't talk to them. So my tip would be that part of your briefing is that you do that. You can't do it now; it's too early to do it now. But if we get through the content tonight, we'll put that over till next week. Is there enough time for you to develop something?
I'll probably have something ready now, but we can wait till next week.
Okay, yeah.
I pretty much put together a PowerPoint induction the other day for a site.
Okay, it's putting people on the spot to do it now, so
Yeah.
we might hold it over to next week. Is that enough time for people, or do you want more time to do it? Doesn't have to be lengthy. Just cover off all the key points.
Should be okay.
Let me know what you think. If it's a problem, let me know.
Yep.
Keep it simple, that's all. And have a couple of questions at the end to make sure there's people are retaining. I'm making notes as I go here, so to keep myself up.
So I present on the 13th, next Wednesday.
If that works for everybody, I don't want to, look, some people can.
Yep.
If not everybody's ready, that's okay. But if we can put it down, that would be good.
Yeah, I'm a 6:45
Okay.
start next week.
Yep.
We'll finish.
Yep. All right, Paul.
Yeah, Trev. Yeah, guys.
Right.
You going,
Good
Paul?
day.
They're just working on activities 2B and 2C together, Paul. One of them is it requires you to do an induction, like an induction briefing. And while you're logging on, if you're able to do it, we might get some people to do them next week. Really, I don't know if you can lay your hands on the induction easily or not. You may be able to hunt around somewhere that's got something to do with Google and find something and make it fit, either an organisation you've worked for previously or some work you're doing now, and just induct us into your business. You could just do a fabricated one about where you know onto your farm or whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, right.
As long as you just put something together. What I would ask you though is to actually submit that to me. So hold it over and then just submit it. I certainly don't want you to do a PowerPoint. If you've got one, great, because you can take over the screen and actually do that yourself.
Yeah.
So if you've got one of those and you want to use it, that's fine. We can arrange for that to happen. But if you haven't got one of those, I'm more than happy for you to just do a verbal briefing to us all, and just make sure you include 3 or 4 or 5 questions at the end to see if we've actually retained anything.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So you don't make it difficult on yourselves. But if next week is too early to do that, then just sing out and we'll hold it over until a later date. If someone will do it next week and they're happy to do it next week, cool, go for it. If not, we'll just hold it over.
Won't be this all black duck, I know that.
Come on, mate, have a dip.
Hey, have a go.
dip.
So what are we doing? 2A?
2A, well, we did 2A last week, not last week, the week before. So we're actually currently working on 2B and 2C together.
Yeah.
What I've done, Paul, is pull all the activities out and put them to the end of each section rather than stopping every 5 minutes and doing an activity.
Yeah, right.
Just to make it flow a little bit easier.
Yep.
He's dead. Nearly got a full parcel.
Hello.
Hi, Deb. How are you?
Hello. How is everyone?
Pretty good, thank you for a Wednesday.
Going well, thanks, Deb.
Yeah, not too bad, Deb.
Hey, Deb.
G'day, Deb.
Activity assist.
Can you believe we're nearly into the second week of May already?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep.
I'm a little bit astounded considering I started working at home on the 18th of March. It seems like last week.
You haven't got this booklet in front of you, have you? The activities
No, I
booklet?
haven't, buddy. Which one is it?
Oh, it's 2C, but it sort of goes on from 2B.
Oh, okay.
It's sort of asking why.
I might have it somewhere.
Document the activities that you assisted with in the work health and safety induction briefing. You should make sure you clearly outline what you did and why this was required.
Oh, that's all right. We'll just. That doesn't look like I've got it. Well, I can bring it up on the screen. So does it link together, do they?
Yeah.
Once you've finished one, then I think you do this one, but it doesn't really make sense. You sort of justifying why you're putting certain things in the induction, I think.
Okay, I'll just take a second, try and drag it up because I can access my files at work.
Yep.
Oh, that's a pain now. So you're going to get to see.
I don't know if it's sort of the way it would read to me if you were trying to tell the contractors if you had testing and tagging requirements, why it's in there.
Maybe why you included it in the presentation, but not actually part of the presentation. The reasons you included what you did in the presentation.
Ooh, I could have opened up the
answers?
Yeah, nearly did then.
Hello.
You weren't quick enough, were you?
I screenshotted it. It was good.
You can see my screen, can you?
Yep.
Yep.
Jesus, just as well I got the right one then, wasn't it? Could have been ugly.
That's too big.
Too big.
To be or not to be?
So that's due
To
next
see.
week.
Yep.
So this is the one there.
That's it.
Oh, yeah. What that's saying is just hand in what you're doing.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, that's easy then.
I thought it was trying to justify why you've got certain things in there. Is it a legal requirement to let them know or something? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that bit there does ask that.
Yeah. But why you're putting in test and tag requirements because it's a legal thing, I suppose.
Well, and your business requires it or whatever. So, that's what that bit is there. I'll just highlight it. Just with your presentation or your talk, just why you've included what you did, basically. So, because every workplace is going to be a little bit different, and so just to justify that you've actually personalised it rather than pinching it off the web somewhere.
Can I just do a blanket thing and write as my integrated management system requires it?
Oh. What do you reckon, guys? Do we reckon we should let him? Should we accept that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Big blanket, that'll do.
And why not?
We'll all pinch it.
Great idea.
Goodness me, you're a shocking pack of bastards. I don't know.
Think
Not
I
you,
do it.
Jeff. Not you, Jeff. You're all right. It's these other people. But yeah, you should just basically outline why you included what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and test the tag is a really good example. So yeah, it's basically just a justification of why you've written the
Got
induction
certain.
you have. Does
And
that
it'd
make
probably be
sense?
client side as well. If you had client info that you needed to pass on,
Sorry, mate, you're breaking up a little bit.
probably some client information that you might have to pass on. Would that be?
Oh, look, I don't. I think it's just it's all it's asking for is just clearly outline what you did and why it was required. So just keep it simple.
Yeah.
You don't make it more difficult than you need to be.
I like that.
Now it says that I've got a checklist. I'm just wondering if that checklist is.
Yeah, is there some sort of criteria you're looking
It
for?
is. I think that's. No, it's not there. It's probably in my version.
Go into the answers, it'll be there.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Just hang on a sec. You like that, Mick? You like what I did then? What can you see now, mate?
Oh, geez.
Tell me what you can see.
A big head.
That'll teach you, won't it? See, I'll wake up to you, buggers.
That looked like she's cooking everyone tea.
Where is it?
Oh.
You can almost see what he's looking at with the reflection in the glasses.
I'm trying to find where they are. This might take a while.
Just move a bit closer to the screen so I can take a screenshot of your eyes.
What's Tracy called them?
Answers.
No, it's not that simple. No. Nothing's that simple. Trust me.
Cheat sheet.
Cheat sheet.
Ah, there it is. Found it. Take a breath.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, mate. How's that work for you? There it is. Don't know why I didn't copy this across before. Observation and marking guide.
Okay.
What is it? 2B checklist? It'd be 2C
Yeah.
checklist, won't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2B, I think, is the one with the checklist. 2C is just the receiving the document.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's really difficult. Not. Yeah, don't stress. Trust me.
All right.
Yeah. Listen and follow instructions. Interact and communicate, and adequately prepare and carry out. That's it. That's my criteria for it. 2C, sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
A clear outline and description of the task they carried out, correct as to why the tasks were carried out. That's my checklist. So, yeah, I wouldn't stress too much.
So do that next Wednesday as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you've got it ready by next Wednesday, that's fine. I'm more than happy for that. I'll have to save that somewhere so that I don't lose it again. Put it. What?
Send it to me. I'll look after it for you.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm actually happy to send you this one. I'm more than happy to send you this one because there's no answers in it. It's just an observation and checklist. So I actually might even do that right now.
So does that mean we can tick it and forge your signature?
Yeah. Good luck. There it is. I'll Put it there. I'm happy. I'm actually happy to send this to you. It doesn't. There's nothing in it that's going to impact greatly on your life. Although I should put it in proper format and put the GoTafe logo on it first. So I'll do that. I'll send it out to you. There's no answers in it, so I feel comfortable with it. Now I can go back to sharing my screen again. Shut that one in the background. So you see the PowerPoint now?
Yep.
Beautiful. So the plan next week, if you are ready to do it, is you might want to listen to this, Deb, because you may have missed that, is to have a induction briefing ready. If you can do it by next week, fine. If you need to postpone it, that's fine as well. But have an induction briefing ready. And if you can at all, have a justification, which is 2C, a justification why you included what you did. So, and that's what 2C is. So if you're ready to do it, fine. If you're not prepared to do it, that's fine too. So it is short notice. I'm happy to be flexible. So anyone cool? Can we move on?
Yeah, all good.
So this section is probably one of the really, really important parts of managing contractors. We kind of touched on it a minute ago where you said they've got to submit documents. So this section really is about monitoring what they've delivered to you to make sure they are actually going to do it. So we'll slide into it. You need to identify some WHS performance indicators so that they understand what your rules are. So, and I think it's important that they understand that when they're coming onto your site, that there's a really high chance that they're going to be monitored and potentially records kept of their performance. I think if they know that up front, a couple of you guys sitting around here now actually go on site, other people's site as contractors. You may not have that happen to you now, but how would you feel if that happened to you? You know, Ryan, Luke, Jeff, even though Jeff can't talk to me, how would you feel if, or even Mick, if you had to go on site and you knew that they were actually monitoring you that closely, that they were actually monitoring your performance and against key performance indicators?
Well, that's what I'm
ready. I don't know. Sorry?
That's what I'm doing at the moment. So I'm a rep for GMW Connections, who will basically supervise all GMW Connection and John Holland work.
Yep.
So I pretty much read their management plan and go out onto site and make sure that they're doing their job as per their management plan. And if they're doing things that they are saying they're not doing, then they basically stop works and there's an investigation on why they're not doing it.
Yep.
The way they're meant to be. So.
Well, that's exactly what we're talking about here is having those markers to say that this is what we want to achieve and why aren't you achieving it? I mean, you're in a really fortunate position because that often doesn't happen. And if you have been a contractor in the past, it probably wouldn't have happened, maybe even happened to you in the past, where there's an on-site supervisor actually monitoring everything you're doing and challenging the questions. Mick, does it happen to you at all?
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, come on, mate.
No, I was just doing something else.
Where you've actually got an on-site person actually monitoring and supervising your work while you're there.
Not really.
Yeah. How would you feel about it?
I don't know. I wouldn't like it. You always look like somebody was watching you.
Yeah, it puts the contractors under stress that they don't need, to be honest. Like it's.
Yeah, I reckon.
Like I remember when I was a contractor and having supervisors on, like we were doing big concrete pours, and you'd have a supervisor watching there to make sure your helmet didn't fall off.
Yeah.
And it's just stress that you don't need when you've got pouring concrete stressful at the best of times.
Yeah. What about you, Ryan? You've had it.
Yeah, so we've got a system in place at the moment. So we do all our daily running sheets and we have our toolbox meetings that we've got to sign in onto.
Yeah.
And we, like our foremans down in Melbourne and up here, they all do their daily running sheets. And if they send it through at the end of the day, so we know who's to work on time, who's leaving early. So we're keeping on track of everyone, and it's to help us move forward and all that sort of stuff, so that we're getting the most productivity out of everyone that we can. So
Yeah. Now,
We
what Luke's doing, I reckon, is probably at the extreme end of things. I think if you sit down and discuss the key performance indicators and just have milestones through the process of where you're going to say you're going to do checks on system, and just let them know that you're going to drop in on site randomly without any notice. And look, that's generally enough to keep people on their toes, providing you actually do that, is to show up on site without notice. I think that's generally enough to keep, without being there all the time, watching over their shoulder all the time. I think if you just show up occasionally and put your head in the door and let people know that you're there and you're watching, I think that's generally enough to keep people motivated. I think if people, and again, I guess it goes back to selecting the right contractor to start with, where you can have that bit of confidence. You know, we've been talking about those preferred contractors, preferred suppliers. That, you know, that's kind of where you iron that stuff out. You've got the people who are going to do the right thing, and you know the ones who not necessarily will do the right thing. So you just keep all those better ones close, so that you try and get the best all the time. But there's nothing wrong with having performance indicators, and there's certainly nothing wrong with having some around health and safety. You know, if you say that you expect them to have 0 injuries as part of a contract deal, then that's a performance indicator, and then they have to justify why they weren't. Whether you put some penalty on them if they don't achieve that, that's your call. It happens a lot where penalties are applied if people don't reach key performance indicators or at markers at some point. Whether you do that or not, entirely up to you. I think it's not a bad idea. It holds people accountable, and it makes them aware that if they don't get it right, there is a penalty.
Yeah, I had it in my old workplace at Urtec. We had KPIs of, workplace inspections. The supervisor might have had to do, 2 of them inspections a month, maybe a task inspection, which is task specific a month. And then, you have a percentage of near misses you wanted recorded for that month, incident reports completed. Yep. So we had a heap of KPIs, yeah.
Yeah. Look, I don't think it doesn't certainly detract from anything. I think it adds quite a lot of value. I look at it a lot along the lines of a continuous improvement process. Here you are engaging somebody. Their systems may not be as robust and as good as yours, but by doing this to them, you're actually lifting them up to be a better performer.
Yeah.
Which is actually not a bad thing, because if they go for a contract somewhere else, then they've got a lot of the processes in place, and they can actually beat the competitor because they're prepared, and maybe they'll maybe the first contractor to say that we're happy to work with key performance indicators and have markers along the way to say this is what we're going to do. So they then put themselves at the front of the pack as far as becoming a preferred supplier. So I think it's a good thing if you can assist your contractors and your suppliers to lift their game. I think that only adds value to them and to you, and it's a win-win for both. Absolute win-win for both. So there's good in that. Absolutely, there's good in that.
What's the go with say you go for a job? So I'll use CAF as an example. CAF goes for a job with the Benalla Council. They're working to an ISO accreditation, but they're not ISO accredited. But they're not a contractor that complete the works themselves. They've got a subcontractor it out, and they engage a contractor that's ISO accredited. Does that mean they use them as a subby but have to work under their system because they're a higher?
Well, it's actually a really interesting one, isn't it? Because the subcontractor is actually better qualified than the contractor.
Yeah.
So that's basically what, in a nutshell, is what it is.
Yeah.
And because the council requires that the people be ISO accredited, it's interesting.
Well, even if they're I don't think they request that they're ISO accredited.
Yep.
But I think if we engaged like a Millers or someone like that I know that's ISO accredited, because they know they can do the works that we'd be looking at. I would have thought we'd have to work under their system if we were to get jobs.
Well, it's almost like the boss is working under the workers' instructions, isn't it?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Everyone understands what ISO is. We're rattling on about what ISO is. Does anyone not understand what ISO is?
Yeah, me.
ISO is like an Australian standard, but it's an international standard, Wayne. So it's
Okay.
International Standards Organisation rather than Australian standards. So they've got a system in place that's actually doesn't just meet Australian standards. It actually meets international standards. So there is an international standard for health and safety. There's an Australian standard for health and safety. So I think what's the international standard for health and safety? I think it's 31,000. I think there's a number for the international standard for health and safety. So it's exactly the same as Australian standard, but it's at a higher level. So the Australian standards really only apply to Australia. Normally we work in with New Zealand. So the AS, NZS, you'll see that a lot of Australian standards and New Zealand standards, so they're quite often combined. But then you go global, and then you have the international standards. And you know, there are local businesses that will test your system and approve you to that international standard, the same as they would with an Australian standard. AS, the Australian Standard 9000 used to be just a quality systems standard, like a standalone quality system standard. It was, when it was originally introduced, it was around manufacturing, but they basically changed it so that service industries could use it. So like GoTafe is a service industry. We don't actually make anything. And basically it's just to have a documented process within your business that could be audited. And so ISO is exactly the same thing, but just on the global platform. So get closer. No, disappear into the fire, mate. It's just caught fire.
Not working.
You need to turn your fire off. Can everyone see that?
Not now.
Bit hard to read.
Yeah. That's how thick is it?
Oh, it's 200 odd pages.
Yeah, I thought as much. So does that answer the question, Wayne?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
So yeah, basically what it is with when you have system standards, what they do, they come in and because there'll be set audit points built into the standard, whether it's an Australian standard or an international standard. There's set audit points built in, and so one of the audit points must be they must have a policy. Now, if I'm talking about the OHS standard, it would say they must have an OHS policy. Tick, yes, they do. Does it meet this requirement? Yes. Do they have a procedure on manual handling? Yes. Does it meet these requirements? Yes. So they kind of audit that documented system, and then interestingly, it actually doesn't test to see whether it's a good system. It just tests to see that it meets the requirements of the standard. So you could be making widgets really badly, but if you're doing it according to what your procedures say, then you'll get a tick, which is really quite stupid. But the whole thing's based around continuous improvement. So you could say that every fifth widget is going to have a fault in it, and when they come to audit you, that's what you're doing. But they may recommend that maybe every fourth widget or no widgets have faults in them or something like that. So it's about a continuous improvement cycle, and it's really just auditing your policies and procedures, not necessarily what you're doing.
Yep.
So your policy and procedures. Sorry.
That book there that we got, it's basically you can buy it online, which just goes through policy and procedure right through the 200 pages.
Yeah.
Got a policy and a procedure for everything you can think of. You can go into the portal.
They won't necessarily test the outcomes. They'll just test to see that you might have a procedure on manual handling. So they'll pull out the procedure on manual handling, and they'll look at it, and they'll go outside and watch someone manual handling, and they'll say, oh, yep, no worries. They are meeting the requirements. They're ticking the box. Move on, order the next one. So it doesn't matter as long as they're manual handling according to their standard. They could be doing it really badly, but as long as they're doing it to what their procedure says, that's okay. It's a bit weird. So with the Australian standard for OHS, it's again exactly the same process. You know, is there a policy? Is there a procedure? Is there a procedure for this? And they just come in and audit. That's the documented system is what they're doing, and then you get a marker to say that you're ISO approved. So ISO approved. So it's a bit weird, but anyway, the whole concept is around continuous improvement. That's the whole point of doing it, is that by documenting your procedure, you'll identify the weaknesses in your system and then start making the system better. And so that continuous improvement cycle should be built into your procedures and your policies, so that you will review them, and there's a process around reviewing to make sure they're still current, they're still right, and all that sort of stuff. So it is meant to encourage businesses to do things better, whatever the standards for. I mean, there's an international standard for environment, there's an international standard for OHS, there's an international standards. They're like Australian standards. There's heaps and heaps and heaps of them. And of course, you know, most of what we do in Australia, we really only need to meet the requirements of Australian standards, but some businesses decide to go with the international standard. They may be chasing international work. There might be somebody coming in from overseas that want work done, so they may request you to have the international standard rather than just the Australian standard. And most times they're not dissimilar. If you look at the Australian standard, look at the international standard, they don't read that much different. Australia has a chair on the international standards board, so you know ours wouldn't be that dissimilar from what the international ones are.
Is it more common for the larger businesses to be ISO accredited than a small?
Construction sites, that's all I see is ISO on every piece of documentation.
Yeah.
So, and that's a choice thing, Wayne, truthfully. It's more driven by the customer. So the customer will say, we need you to have a system that's ISO accredited before you can get our contract. So that's what will drive it. And of course, if you're doing it for one and you get your standard approved, you get your system approved, then it's a really good selling point when you go to win the next job. You can put in your tender document that you're ISO approved. So that will always tick a big box when you're submitting for next work. They go, okay, because it ticks, like immediately you see that, you go, okay, it ticks a box. You know, so otherwise you're comparing someone who's not ISO accredited with someone who is ISO accredited. You're always going to go with the one that's got a quality system in place rather than the one that hasn't.
A lot of the tenders that I've looked at, they've asked you what system you're using and if it is ISO.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was working as the quality manager at Decca, we had the agreement with Vic Rose to do license testing, and all they wanted was a system. Yep. The CEO decided that we should go down the path of ISO 9000. As the more and more we got into it, the more and more expensive it got. And I said to him, and I submitted a paper to the executive of the organisation, that I personally didn't think it was worthwhile getting ISO accredited because it added no value to the company. We weren't going to be tendering for international contracts, and really it was all about license testing for Vic Roads anyway. So he hated me saying that because I think he might have had a KPI on getting ISO accredited. He didn't like me to say it at all. I think he had written it into his own KPIs that by such and such a date we would be ISO accredited. But I convinced him that it wasn't actually worthwhile. I actually won the argument after a while because I did a paper on how much it was actually going to cost. But there's a cost to get people to come in and audit your system, and it's not cheap. It's expensive, and you pay for the right to use their logo of the company. That's accredited your system, and you've got this ongoing cost of maintaining the system just to keep it to the same standard, and they've got to be coming in and audited on a regular basis to make sure that you maintain your ISO accreditation. It's a really good way to make money for not much work, truthfully. And so I managed to convince them that we didn't need to go down that path. All Vic Roads wanted was that you had a system. I'm doing exactly the same thing with WorkSafe. All they give a shit about is you've got a system for managing process. They don't care that it's accredited or not, as long as you've got a system. And they do come in and audit our system, the same as Vic Roads used to. So, as I said, some companies see it as okay, they're ISO accredited, so they're going to get a preference straight away because their system's been checked and audited, and we know that it meets a standard. Now, I guess it's a bit like if you go and buy something from Bunnings, You know, you know the brands, you know which brand you would prefer versus which brand you don't prefer to buy. And so, like, you know, if you've got a choice of Ryobi or Ozito, which one you're going to lean towards, or DeWalt and Ozito. And it's kind of the same thing. You know, if you've got ISO accreditation versus not being ISO accreditation, it's kind of the same thing. You know, you're actually buying a better product. Well, technically, potentially a better product, is what I should be saying. But mind you, all these systems are only as strong as the weakest link. So just because they've got it documented doesn't mean they're always going to do it.
I was just about to say that. There's a lot of companies that I'm looking at the moment that's doing complete opposite to what their system says.
Yeah, and look, I reckon I've talked enough, you know, over the last little while about systems and that continuous improvement stuff where it's okay to have it written down, but you've got to live and breathe it. You know, I was actually only saying to a group of managers this morning in the session I did this morning that it's okay to have a documented procedure, but is it living, breathing and living, or is it just sitting on a shelf collecting dust? And it was written by somebody in isolation 5 years ago and absolutely doesn't reflect what the business is doing now. Yes, I've got a procedure, fantastic, but it's so far out of date or so far not relevant to the business, it's not funny. So I always say, and the guys that have heard me for a while now will say that your procedures should be your training documents. So you pull the procedure out for doing ABC and you train your staff on it. That way they are forced to keep the documents live, because there will be always a slight variation from what's happening versus what the piece of paper says you should be doing. I hope I'm not confusing people. I'm trying very hard not to confuse people. Hopefully I'm making some sort of sense.
Yeah.
So,
There's all that stuff on induction. Have you already done that?
Yes, Deb.
Is that on YouTube? Because I can't find it on YouTube.
no, I haven't uploaded them yet. It's a difficult process for me to upload them, Deb. Normally when I'm at work, I turn around to the lady behind me. I give her the link. She turns it into a YouTube, and then I send you the link. But I don't have access to her at the moment, so I'll do my best to try and get some converted. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it, but anyway.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the pages thinking, no, I haven't looked at that, haven't seen that.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
we just went past 2C, activity 2C.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Nice picture of your roof, Deb.
Oh, is it on video again?
Yeah.
It's just we're not doing anything bad.
At least I've got clothes on. Oh dear.
Or sitting there in your PJs like me.
I'm a bit worried about Wayne. He's muted and he's not got his camera. I'm a bit worried about what he's doing. Sitting in a dark room eating a banana or something.
I'm here, mate.
A bit worried about your brother.
All good.
You're not getting that isolate. What is it? That isolation fever?
No, what is it?
But it used to be a word. There used to be a thing floating around where you cabin fever. That's it.
Yep, cabin fever.
You haven't got a bit of cabin fever going on, have you, brother?
No.
I'm feeling much better after being out and face to facing 11 customers yesterday. Being in a classroom, looking at them across some tables, interacting in a live environment. It was actually really quite invigorating. So you forget how nice it is to have human interaction.
I'd like to.
Oh, you're lucky. Trust me. And for
Yeah,
those
life
of you,
hasn't changed much for me.
no, look, and for some of the other guys, it probably hasn't changed that much either. But certainly life has been very different for me up until Monday. So, you may need to assess information. So when you tender and you decide to engage, you need to look at all that supporting documents that they give you. We've just finished talking all about this stuff, their policies, procedures, their supporting documents about their qualifications. And look, it's one of those difficult ones. You know, if you're talking about people having qualifications, how do you know they're right? How do you know that they are? You know, how long ago if you guys that have got trade papers, how long ago did you do your trade, and what's changed since? So it's a very different workplace out there now than what it was when you did your trade. And
It'd be like me and got a trade qualification in 91 and I haven't used it since.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. You got a Cert 3 in bus driving?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm also a qualified dental technician
Ah,
and
there
I've
you
never
go.
used it. I went into the military instead.
Oh, okay. So dental technicians make false teeth, don't they?
Yep.
Wow, there you go. Something you learn about people every day. So I can see you nodding right about what I'm saying. You know, we got these qualifications years ago, and it just
Yep.
so,
I got my high risk dogging kick ticket, which, you know, it's a week course. It costs about $2,000 to get, and it lasts 5 years. Never used it once. Forgot all the whistles and all the techniques and whatnot. And all I got was a renewal in the mail, $70 to renew it for another 5 years.
so did you have to sign a stat deck to say you're still doing it?
Just paid the money and got a new card sent to me.
I not long ago renewed my forklift license, and when you do your forklift license, you've got to sign a stat deck to say you're actually still competent.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone else has been in that boat recently with their fork licenses.
So what do you do? Do you assess yourself?
Yeah, I lied. What can I say?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, how easy is it?
That's exactly right. Same as getting your boat license or anything else. You know, I've had a boat license for about 10 years. And I've been in the boat once, and that was about 10 years ago. I've got a B-double license. I've got a motorbike license. I haven't been on a motorbike for close to 30 years.
Yeah, but it is funny. Like, if you don't use what you qualified in for a while, you forget things, and
That's right.
it's no good to you.
No, that's right. So, you know, bits of paper are only as good as the paper they're written on, basically.
Yeah.
This is what we were kind of touching on before. When you're looking at their documentation, you know, before we touched on, there's a checklist for you guys. You know, you might want to have a checklist for you with your contractors to say that, yes, I've got an OHS policy. Yes, I've got a procedure for working at heights. Yes, I've got a procedure for hot work. Yes, I've got a procedure for welding. They've got all those procedures in place, and just check off to make sure they've got them. I would suggest you even read through them. I would suggest certainly you look at their swims in detail. If they provide you with swims, well, they should be providing you with swims, safe work method statements. I would suggest you actually, particularly if you normally would use swims, you know what they should look like and what they should contain, because you very quickly pick up whether they've just grabbed them off the internet or not, and whether they're actually real. I can see you laughing, Luke. Or whether they're
It's so funny. Safety Culture, who are a massive organisation that send out swims and management plan templates and whatnot, and there's about 6 contractors that I've seen that have just pretty much received this document, printed it out, and haven't even put their letterhead on it. They've just printed it straight out and taken it to site.
Yeah, well, I think I might have said a couple of weeks ago that we had that when we rebuilt our bakery here at Fry Street, that there was 2 companies who were totally non-related to each other bringing baking equipment in, but when you laid out their swims, you would have reckoned the same bloke wrote them. So it was a bit of a giggle. It was similar work, but you would have reckoned it was the same person. As I think I said at the time, that one mob hadn't even bothered to take off. They must have pitched it from New South Wales because all the reference was to WHS, and they hadn't even bothered to localise it. They basically just decided to leave it exactly as it was. They did put their name on it though. It talks there about duty of care, so they actually fully understand that that they're, whilst they are a contractor and they are technically your employee, that they fully understand they still have an obligation to their own workforce. because technically they are, if you're dealing with a prime contractor and they bring their employees on site, then technically, yes, while they're on site, they're your employees, but they also the prime contractor's employees, just to make sure that they are aware that while these people are on site, they fall into both camps, and that they need to understand that while they're on your site, they follow your rules. And if at a minimum, your rules, their rules may be better and stronger than yours, that's fine, but they still need to understand that whether on your site, they work within your rules. I had a debate with our guys, our engineering department a few years ago. It resulted, what brought it on was a kid put his hand into a waste steel bin and cut his hand. And so part of the incident investigation, I went over there and said, what happened, show me what happened. And I said, if he was going into a waste
Excuse me,
steel
Trevor. Sorry. Is everyone else getting feedback?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure who it is. I can still hear it.
Might be Ryan, I reckon.
Test. No, it's gone. Must have been you, Ryan. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? You, Ryan? That's terrible.
It's his old man in the fridge again.
So I went over there and I said, asked what happened, and I said why he was going into a scrap metal bin. I said, why wasn't he wearing gloves? And he said, because in our industry you don't wear gloves. And at that point, I held my breath and counted to 20, and then said, whose workplace is this? They said, Go Tapes. I said, what is Go Tapes' requirements around the use of PPE when you're on this site? And I get this sort of look back at me. I said, if you went to somebody else's site and their procedure said that you must wear gloves when you're going into a scrap metal bin, would you do it and would you comply with it? He said, of course. I said, these are our students coming to our site, mate. Our rules are, this is our site. They do what we tell them to do. I don't give a stuff what they do elsewhere, but when they're on our site, where they abide by our rules, black and white, and left them with that thought. So, no, that's just the way it is. That's, our rules could be better or worse than somebody else's, but they're our rules, and as a minimum, they need to comply with our rules. So you decided which contractor. We've touched on this already. Do they have public liability insurance? Is it enough to cover the job? And if they make a big mistake, you look at some of those big incidents that occur in Melbourne and some of those high rise where cranes collapse. That you're talking, if you've got $20 million, that's not much to cover that sort of cost. If a crane hits the highway, takes out a few people in the car and everything in the process, $20 million ain't going to do much. So you need to evaluate. It's okay to get a copy of their public liability documents, but is it actually enough to cover if things go wrong?
Wasn't there a death and explosion today somewhere?
I didn't hear.
I got a feeling I heard it on the radio when I was pulling in tonight that there was a death somewhere and an explosion with a heap of injuries.
No, I haven't heard. I haven't heard.
In Queensland.
Was that?
Okay. Interestingly, just while you're talking about that, does anyone know what the current workplace deaths are so far this year?
I'm going to have a stab and say 20-something.
The last I looked, we're sitting at 20. So this is the first week of May, we're at 20. What did we have for the whole of last year?
20.
25. Still got 7 months to go.
Yeah.
And we're already nearly over. That's including those 4 police who died because they're workplace deaths. WorkSafe haven't recorded them as workplace deaths yet. It'll be interesting to see whether they do or not. They should.
That's funny because you've got the manslaughter rule coming in very soon. You'd think employer bosses and that would be making sure that their workplaces were a lot safer than last year. Well, yeah,
but yeah, a lot of them are. when you look at the statistics, we'll just have to touch on it quickly. You look at the statistics; they're mostly farming, building construction, and road transport. And every year's the same. It rarely ever changes.
Yeah.
So, and this year's no different, except for the 4 police. But that involved road transport. So, so yeah, that was all a bit weird. So, but I've included those 4 people based on the fact that they were workplace deaths.
Yep.
So that brings us up to 20 so far this year. It was only the start of May. So it's tracking to be one of our worst on record for a long time.
Mm.
And mining's not in there?
Sorry?
Mining?
No, I don't think there's been any deaths in mining in Victoria this year yet.
Oh, Vic, yep.
Yeah, it's only Vic, mate, yeah. Yep, that's just Victoria. Yeah, that's tracking. We're tracking horrendously. I'm surprised that WorkSafe haven't been bouncing off the walls. I think the police deaths will be kept quiet as part of the whole WorkSafe workplace death stuff. I think there's a fair bit of sensitivity around those 4 deaths. So I think maybe some 2 or 3 years in the future they may talk about them. But I think right now it's a little bit too raw and too sensitive for people to be talking about. So,
Yeah.
but it's just, yeah. So is 20 million, is 200 million enough? Like, it just depends on what your stuff is. Is there workers' compensation current? Is it enough to cover off? So,
But
just
honestly, Trevor, I've never seen a farmer do dodgy stuff ever.
really.
Really? Yeah.
Really? Yeah. It's funny, and considering they make up about 1/3 of the deaths so far this year.
Probably won't change either.
One of the key points here is confidentiality. I mean, you can't be sharing details of what one contractor is supplying you with another contractor. You need to treat that sort of information with a great deal of confidentiality and certainly keep it within your business, and have storage systems to do that. So you have storage that's particular to each individual, and it's all kept separate, not left laying around. Stuff on work schedules and timelines. That confidentiality also applies to your business. They're coming into your business to do work for you. Do you want them taking your trade secrets and taking them onto the next business?
So you can't give them a quote to the opposition.
Well, no. What this is, you might want to have a clause in your contract that says, you know, you agree to the fact that what you're going to see here is particular to our site, and you are agreeing to not take that information to other places.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a bit like the old mate getting photographed in the police station the other night.
Yeah.
What a dickhead.
I couldn't believe a policeman would do that. I mean, it might have been okay to take the photo, but you know, my wife was talking about it, and it was a day later. She said, "Oh, just go on Facebook, you'll find it." And I just typed in his name in that search engine at the top of Facebook. Up it came.
Yeah, I reckon I was getting Snapchats of things, you know, a couple of hours after it was released.
Yeah, it's still now that it's out there, it'll never go away.
Yeah,
it's out there for all to see now. It's just everywhere. So that's those coppers are going to be in a fair bit of strife.
The way of you were just saying that about documentation and stuff. Can a contractor take or basically copy your sort of documentation, how you set things out, and take it and implement and put their letterhead on it?
No, you should have them copyrighted.
Yeah, because
the laws around copyright are significant. I'll just say that as we're going through these PowerPoints, the whole document is copyrighted to the company we bought it off. We do have written authority from them to modify it, to put our logo on it. One of the questions we asked when we saw the PowerPoints, I'll just click down a slide. Those cartoons, who owns the copyright to those? So we went through our education assurance department, And that's the stuff they ask. Who owns the copyright on those pictures? So it's absolutely extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. You can't,
Yeah, because the reason I ask is a lot of the family companies that are working around here that have businesses like, I say, a W&P Pumps or someone like that, they've been working for John Holland, who their documentation, swims, all their procedures are fairly high level. They've basically taken that template and using them on their sites with a different letterhead, same formatting and everything.
Yeah,
I don't know if John Holland must have let them do it, I suppose.
well, look, if they may be happy to share that, because again, it's about continuous improvement, Luke. So, some companies might be happy to let people do that. We are absolutely anal about our stuff being used.
Yep.
Where I have concerns, you may see me send out stuff as PDF, even though these days you can actually convert a PDF pretty easily. It's not that difficult. The ones that are difficult, the PDFs that are difficult to change are where you scan them as a PDF. If you develop like this document here, when I finish with it and you want a copy of it, I'll save it as a PDF. I do that because it actually makes it smaller. You still get the same value out of it, but you can easily convert it back to a PowerPoint presentation. However, if I print these slides out, scan them, save them as a PDF, then you can't convert them. So yeah, once they've been through a scanner, it locks them. You can't ever change them. It's even difficult to like highlight and I can actually highlight. I can't actually highlight and copy the stuff across. So there is ways around to protect your stuff. Some people actually put passwords on documents. You may have seen that happen. I do that a fair bit. If I've got a document and I'll, rather than PDF it, I'll just put a password on it. So people can't actually unlock it and use it as password protected. They can look at it, but they can't unlock it and use it. So that's, I used to use that a lot. You can use it in Word, you can use it in Excel, you can use it even in PowerPoint.
Yeah, we're doing that for our forms once they're implemented and approved. So no one can just go in there and change them.
Yeah, what we do internally here a lot is our document developers lock the document except for certain parts of it. If I sent you a copy of our online enrolment form, you could type in it, but you couldn't change any of the words. I'll have name, and there'll be like a yellow box beside it that you can type in.
Yeah.
But you actually can't change that word name. You can't like fiddle with it.
Yep.
So that's just said. It's a bit of a more difficult process, but that's kind of what our document controllers are doing now. Where not so much where we access them, but where they're going out to the public. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So they won't fiddle with them because our stuff, like everybody says, there's huge copyright on stuff. But look, the copyright's only as good as someone who wants to pursue it in court.
Yeah. And
it's not a cheap process to take someone to court for copyright. Now, the prime example is that Australian song that we all love and enjoy so much, where the bastard American company took men at work to court over about 3 notes in a song and actually won. Was it Land Down Under?
In Old Gum Tree.
Yeah, Land Down Under. There's about 3 notes or 5 notes in there that sounded like a song that they owned the
Kookaburra and Old Gum Tree.
Yep. So they American company owned it and took men at work to court and cleaned them out, and they won it.
Yeah.
And this is just 2 blokes sitting around writing a song, and give it no thought to what the song sounded like when they did it.
Rough.
Yeah. Look, why would you want to do it for a song? Who knows? But people are funny. Interestingly, that Michael Jackson actually owned all the Beatles songs. He bought the copyright to all the Beatles songs. Paul McCartney bought it all back again when Jackson died. So Paul McCartney now owns the copyright on all the songs. People do that. That's what they do. They buy copyrights. By putting the copyright logo on it and the copyright statement won't stop people from using it, I can assure you. All you've got to do is go in here and change 10, 15 words and take their copyright off. And you'll see occasionally where I've got on the bottom of my slides, there might be a in small writing where I've sourced something. That's because I've been required to do it because of copyright requirements. Difficult process to scroll your way through. So yeah, it's copyright should be respected, but quite often it's not. So you need to have statements in there about them. If you're undertaking confidential work, that you have a statement in there about them and how they're going to maintain the confidentiality, and particularly around secret in trade stuff that you do that nobody else does. It could be the others. What is it? How many herbs and spices for Kentucky Fried Chicken? I forget how many there was.
41, 42.
Yeah, something like 41 herbs and spices, secret herbs and spices. So all that sort of stuff, they own and they protect. And so you may be required to make a statement how you're going to, what you see, you're not going to take elsewhere, or what you may hear or something like that. I mean, when I was at Decker, our contractor, cleaner had the contractor to come in and clean the offices after hours. I was in there one night after hours and actually caught him going through people's documents on their desk. What he was doing with the information, I don't know. I have no idea, but it certainly raised significant red flags to me, because I also know he had the contract at the police station, the same bloke. So, I didn't raise it with the police, but certainly I raised it internally with our management, and he was given the boot.
Is it dodgy?
Yeah, you just do your job, mate. Keep your nose out of people's stuff. Like, it's got none of your business. So what their work schedule are. So when's the start and finish date of their expected work. There could be penalties, as you well know, for going longer than they should. Even when you build a house these days, there can be penalties in that if the builder takes too long. What the process is around if they intend to engage subcontractors, whether you are prepared to allow them to do that, or whether they must actually do the work themselves and not engage somebody else. And if they are engaging somebody else, who are they? What are they doing? What qualifications they have? All that normal same stuff. Having your agreement with them, the sort of work quality you expect from them. What standard does the work need to be at? To make sure that they are actually doing it. And that's probably the one where you need to monitor the closest, is to make sure they actually are doing the quality of work. Because, we all know that there's some shoddy work done out there sometime. It talks about the next one is the scope of the work and what they need to bring. You supplying tools, they supplying tools. Do they require generators? What are you providing, and what are they providing? And that's generally a schedule. You can quite often see a schedule at the rear of a contract where it'll actually have all that really detailed work, detailed requirements listed. So that it's really quite clear. We are providing this, you are providing that, and this needs to be obtained or whatever. So that really needs to be quite clearly outlined. Now, if you're expecting them to provide this, then they need to provide that. They shouldn't be providing their own. Using yours. This one's about inspecting and monitoring them while they're doing the job, and that's what we were getting at before, Luke, when you were saying you're actually currently doing that. So it's important. Don't just take them at face value. Look, if they're a long-term contractor and you've had no issues with them in the past, you may not need to monitor them. But they could also be at a place where they're feeling super confident that you're not watching them as well. And so they could be getting away with stuff where you're not really paying attention to what's going on. So I think if you have a process around monitoring their performance, then whether they're a new contractor or a long-time contractor, I think it's important that they get monitored. I mean, I don't know how many of your businesses engage cleaners to come in and do cleaning in their business, but they're usually, when they first get engaged, they're bloody fantastic, like everything's spotlessly clean. But as the years wear on, less and less stuff, get done, and the window's not getting as cleaned as often as what they should, and because in their original tender document they may have to, wipe benches, and all of a sudden you find that that's not happening as often as it used to, and they get a bit lazy and start taking shortcuts, and the management of the business quite often will cut them down on the amount of time they can spend in each building and all that sort of stuff. So it pays to have a regime in place to do those on-the-spot audits all the time to keep track of things. Terrible you have to do it, but it's life. You know, you're sometimes paying a lot of money for these contractors to do your stuff, so you want them to do the best they can and the best they should. No, all you're doing is asking them to do what you contracted them to do. That's really the simple answer. Interestingly, with this COVID-19, our cleaners have been asked to step up and do more work. They're doing less, but they're expected to do more different work. And that took a renegotiation of the contract between us and the contract cleaners. They just wouldn't do it at our request. We had to sit down and do a formal agreement in place to actually do that extra work. Mind you, they're doing less cleaning because there's no one at the campuses, but they're doing different cleaning than stipulated in the contract. So it's becoming quite interesting because we are doing some classes. They're restricted to where they absolutely have to, like our auto guys, our plumbing guys, our engineering guys. They're restricted to 6 clients at a time. And our nursing is something they're doing 4 students at a time. But when that day is finished, the cleaners go through those areas and absolutely sterilise everything ready for the next day. So that's really outside the scope of what they were originally engaged to do. So they've had to renegotiate a different part of the contract for that purpose. So observing work, assessing premises equipment. So go and have I raised this point yesterday with a group of potential HSRs. You know, I had bought leads into their business, power leads, power boards, power supply for the laptop and for the data projector. And I said, you know, your HSRs, my leads are all tagged and correct. And I said, yeah, that's right. And I said, I reckon you better get up and have a look at them. One of my leads was actually in date. They all had tags on them, but only one was actually in date. So that's one of those things where, you know, if your requirement is they used tagged and tested equipment, then you need to make sure that it actually is tagged and tested and it is correct. It sounds awful you have to do that, but you know, ultimately it's your responsibility. You know, sit with them and identifying hazards, having regular, particularly on big contracts, having those sit-down meetings with them, whether they be weekly, monthly, daily, doesn't really matter, about, and particularly talking about how they're managing hazards on the workplace. You know, because your focus is OHS. It's not about the end product. You've got your OHS caps on. That's what this course is all about. So you need to sit down with them and talk with them about how they're managing OHS. And certainly, if there's an injury or an incident, you need to be involved in the investigation of that to find out what happened and hold them to account and ensure it doesn't happen again, which is probably that 4th bullet point. And then certainly make notes that you've done those audits. That's really, really important. So, because if something does happen down the path, you've got evidence to say that you've actually audited them on a regular basis. Because there would be nothing worse than if you did nothing, and that would be exposed pretty quickly if someone got hurt. Because there's that supervision stuff that sits inside the legislation. I'm conscious that we're coming up to some slides. Do you guys need a break? It's 20 to 8. You need to have a spell.
I'm fine.
You're not losing concentration?
I'm all good.
No more than usual, did you say, Deb? No, Lynn? Did someone say no more than usual? Look, I'm not going to bother spending too much time on that, except to say that technically they're your employees, or the business's employees, not you specifically, and that you need to have a really good working relationship with them, and they feel comfortable to have you around. They shouldn't feel uncomfortable having an OHS person walk into their space. If they're doing everything right, there should be nothing uncomfortable about it. You shouldn't be there to try them, catch them doing the right thing. You should be there to catch them doing the wrong thing. You should be there to catch them doing the right thing. That would be the ideal, rather than trying to catch them out doing something wrong. And it'd be nice if you're there and you see something good to actually say, look, I noticed this was going on before, guys. Well done. It's good to see you're doing what you said you were supposed to be doing. How do you deal with non-compliance? So if you do find an issue, what do you do? What do you do, Luke?
Non-conformance.
Give them a non-conform.
I don't normally take it that far unless it's pretty bad, but yeah, it'll start with a phone call and a follow-up email, and then hopefully some actions from there. And if they don't learn the second time, then it's a non-conformance.
Yeah,
which is pretty bad for the business.
Yeah, look, if you identify, really, truthfully, you should do it right, and they should be given a non-conformance straight up front.
Yep.
I mean, you're being a nice guy by not doing that. And some contractors may actually play on that, know that they can get away with a little bit before they get a smack.
Yep.
But really, if you look at it as a cycle of continuous improvement, and they take it as a cycle of continuous improvement, they should just look at it as if to say, well, our system is not doing what it should be doing. This is an opportunity for us to make it better.
Yep.
And that's what it's really all about. It's not about trying to find an area of non-conformance. It's about that if it does happen, then people address it and it gets fixed. Because ultimately, it's about making them a better contractor as well. So
yeah, what I find on site, and it's probably across most industries, the busier you get, or the more you take on as a business, the less supervision you've got overseeing your workers and whatnot, and then what you're meant to be implementing doesn't happen, which I'm finding is happening now. You've got some contractors just going for work, putting in for jobs left, right, and centre, and hoping that they'll win it, and then dealing with it then, and then they get all the work, and then they can't actually supervise how all that works, and then their safety goes out the window. And then we've got a contractor now who was doing really good work 2 months ago. Now he's flat out. The supervision's dropped off, and now he's down the bottom of the ladder and getting talked about. Because his compliance is not there anymore.
Yeah, and that's the difficulty for them. I mean, if they're going to ramp up, they need to ramp up all sections, not just take on extra work with what they got and trying to make it stretch. But that's a learning curve for them. I'm sure if the business brought them in and talked to them about that, I reckon they would work their butts off to try and rectify it.
Yeah, which I think it's starting to turn around, but
yeah, well, I mean, if it doesn't, then they drop off the preferred supplier list.
Pretty much, yeah.
And they need to be told that, saying this is what we've identified happening, and generally they'll acknowledge that's what's happening and say, well, this is the decision we've decided to take as a result, and they'll be gutted and devastated. But it's just the way. It's just life. I mean, ultimately, it's about your it's your workplace, your standards, your approvals. So, it is a tough gig to actually tell people that they're no longer on the preferred supplier list.
Yeah.
And look, it's good practice to tell them, but sometimes that doesn't always happen. They just drop off, and people never know why.
Yeah. I just don't get the work issue to them.
This is stuff I've just talked about anyway, so I don't know why those slides are there again. Work area cleanliness, that's something that's always easy. You just show up and it's a shitty looking site, the shitty work's going on. Simple, pretty simple. I mean, that's all that high risk stuff. Are they managing that well? That if you go and look at the workplace deaths, that height stuff's really critical because people are still falling to their deaths all the time. Confined spaces is a real sensitive area as well. If any of you guys work in confined space, I know Mick, you've said before you do a bit of confined space stuff. I think Ryan said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a bit of it as well.
Issue on site at the moment too with confined space.
So it's critical that stuff is managed and with your OHS hat on, that they're actually saying what they should be doing. Because there'd be nothing worse than if it turned pear-shaped on your watch. Not that you would be held accountable, but certainly it's you personally as the OHS person, you wouldn't be held accountable, but certainly the business may be held accountable. We talked this before about their incident reporting. Are they actually complying with their PPE requirements? Is there appropriate safety fencing? Do they understand that they're not to talk to the media about anything that goes on site? Are they managing the environment? Not that that falls under the OHS umbrella, but I think I've said before that sometimes that falls under the OHS role as well, that OHSE stuff, safety, health and environment. It's not uncommon, and you know, contracts have details on payment. Obviously, you know, Luke and I were just talking about non-compliance and non-compliance reports. I don't know if there's any examples in your workbook about with those documents. They're pretty standard looking. Basically, it's just a description of what the non-conformance was, when it occurred, who's going to fix it, and what's the expected timeline to get it done. And then ensure you do a follow-up to ensure that happens. That's a really important part. Just don't take their word for it. Go in and see. You know, we've all may have seen stuff that's going on where it shouldn't have been going on, and people need to be held account for that. And the issuing of a non-conformance or non-compliance should be no big deal. If people have got a robust system, then it should be no big deal to get a non-conformance. It's not nice to get one. Interestingly, we got audited by WorkSafe on our procedures around our health and safety rep training in 2018, and they issued us a non-conformance for our enrolment form and our enrolment process. And that reverberated through the whole organisation. A, because it was WorkSafe, and B, they had just introduced that online enrolment process, and basically the auditor pulled it to bits. So it's, you know, they because the WorkSafe stuff is non-accredited, like you're doing an accredited course, because the WorkSafe is non-accredited, they WorkSafe don't want to see any mention of assessment. They don't want to see any talk of RTOs. They don't want to see any talk of any of that stuff. It's all irrelevant as far USIs are all irrelevant as far as they're concerned. It's got nothing to do with doing the training that we're doing, and so they don't want to see any mention of it. And so, of course, it's all over our enrolment process, because 90% of our clients are accredited course stuff. So it certainly sent some reverberations through the organisation and sent some panics up and down the organisation. They managed their way through it, but and the auditor was happy with, but we got issued a non-conformance for it, which kind of rattled a few buckets. I was quite happy because I was quite happy for her to do it. In fact, I encouraged her to do it. It's a bit naughty, isn't it?
I'd love you.
That's not surprising, is it?
Yeah. She sort of said outside the meeting, "What do?" I said, is it compliant? She said, "No." I said, "Well, then issue a non-compliance." Really that simple. You know, I'm an ex-quality manager, black and white.
Black and white, yeah.
Does it meet the standard? No. Then issue a non-conformance. This one's about investigating non-compliance. Look, I guess without going too deep into quality systems and quality systems management, you as the OHS person should be asking the questions around there was a non-compliance. What was the outcome of the non-compliance? Why did it happen? And what do you intend to do about it to make sure it doesn't happen again? So I look, from my point of view, that part of it is really up to the business to address. You know, if I put on my OHS hat and walked into your site and saw a non-conformance, I would issue them with a non-conformance report, and then I would then do this as part of when they came back to me with how they're responding to it. Really, that's up to them to address. Not up to me to investigate. Certainly, that should be up to them to address. I'll just issue them the bit of paper, let them go off, and come back to me with what they're going to do to fix it. But that's something that they would certainly take into consideration in their investigations of why the non-compliance occurred. What do you reckon? Does anyone agree with what I'm saying? For me, I got no interest in just
Ours
issue a non-conformance and tell me how you're fixing it. I don't give a shit about the rest.
Yeah, ours was in an incident report. I think we had heaps of boxes. It was damage, quality,
Yeah,
personnel, or whatever it may be. So you'd tick the quality box, and then you'd go through what they did, and then you'd obviously get them to come back with an investigation and why it happened and what they're going to do to fix it. And
yeah, that's right. That to me would be entirely up to them to provide, not up to you to do.
Yeah.
Like, here's the non-conformance. Here's what's wrong. Show me how you fixed it. Is really all. That's all. Really, all I'm interested in. Here's the problem. Here's how you fixed it. And be confident that that's what they've done. This process here is about them making sure that they tick the boxes. So look, I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on that.
Trevor?
Yep.
So if there was a non-conformance or non-compliance,
Yep.
would the business who engaged the contractor, would they have a template that they would capture that information and then just issue that?
Yes, there'll be a non-conformance report, or look, we call them work improvement notices. I can actually grab one a bit later on and email it out to you also. You get a bit of a template of what they look like. And basically all it does, it's not that dissimilar to a risk assessment, I guess. What happened, what do you intend to do to fix it, and when's it going to be done by? Really, it's, I would, if I was filling out a work improvement notice, I would fill out the top box saying this is what I identified is a problem with the system, and the rest of the document is up to the people who I hand that to work through, and that'll basically asking them to tell me how you're going to fix it. Does that make sense, Wayne? So that document.
Sorry, yeah, I was on mute. Sorry. Yeah,
that document would come from the business that engaged the contractor. So if I've gone in and seen something that's not compliant or non-conforming, not conforming, I would fill out that form and hand it to them saying, this is what I identified. Get back to me in a week about it, what you're going to do to fix it.
Yep.
Is there a way you can do it without having that formal document? Like, I know there's a lot of farming contractors that are doing works for us that wouldn't have that system in place of a non-conformance. They'd just have an email sent to them and they'd have to reply to it that way. Yeah,
really to have a formal process, because in a properly documented quality system, if you issue a non-compliance or a non-conformance to somebody, it should have its own individual number.
Mm-hmm.
And then that gets recorded in your process. So like you'd have a non-conformance register.
Yeah.
And then, so you might have, you might use a simple one like 01/2020. So that's the first one you've issued for 2020. And that goes in the register. And it's just a brief summary of the date it was issued, who to, what for, resolved. And then there's a paper trail. So somebody can come in and like happens to us, WorkSafe come in and they just want to see, they call it our continuous improvement register. So they come in and say, can we have a look at your continuous improvement register? And they'll go through that and then they'll highlight ones that they may want to look at in more detail. Part of our process is that when you do a health and safety rep course, at the end of the course, participants have to fill in a feedback form. Now that's a WorkSafe produced document. And so at the end of the course, if we've had 15 participants, there should be 15 feedback forms. My boss is required to go through each of those and identify where there's shortcomings. They then come back to me. Those shortcomings are put into our continuous improvement register. And then it's either up to me or I feed it out to somebody else to rectify. So I may come back in where we've got complaints about seats in classrooms. And 10 people have complained out of 12 that the seats are terrible. So the boss comes back and he reads the feedback and says, this has been highlighted. I put it in a continuous improvement. I'll then submit a job into our assets saying we've had complaints from our customers about the seats and we need to go for a better seat. And that's actually one I've actually done at our Wangaratta campus. And so that's gone into the WorkSafe continuous improvement register, and they'll come through then and look at our register. And whilst the seat one won't necessarily worry them, But if there's complaints about the qualities of the handouts, or there's issues around the timings, then that gets recorded, and they'll want to know information about that. So yeah, it is an important part of the process, Luke. Absolutely, that should be documented and followed up. Absolutely. So yeah, that's just that continuous improvement cycle, and where you have those registers, and that register stays live forever. So ours goes back. I think it goes back. It's a Excel spreadsheet. I think it goes back to about 2014. So it's all based on feedback. It's also where we were non-conformance once, like with our enrolment paperwork, because we got issued a non-conformance from WorkSafe, that goes into the continuous improvement cycle. So it's not just from the customers; it was also from WorkSafe. And it could be any faults we actually find by internal audit with the system that could go into the continuous improvement cycle as well. So we also monitor our own performance, as well as our customers monitoring ours, and WorkSafe monitoring us. Is that making sense? So it's got basically a customer complaints register, if you like, or a complaints register is what it is, to keep it a little bit simple. It's where you get feedback and how you can improve your process. So yeah, Luke, I'd be encouraged to actually roll it out, even for individuals. I know it's going to hurt them and make them weep a little bit.
We had a contractor that received one the other day.
Yeah, I think it's all in the sale, how you sell it to them. Yeah, you just don't be an arsehole about it. You say that this is about improving the continuous improvement. We're giving this to you because we want you to improve what you're doing. We like what you do, but we just need for you to improve this process, and we need to do it formally just to make sure that you understand. It doesn't mean we're not going to use you anymore. It just means we've found a fault and we want you to fix it. To show you and help you understand what a turd I am, we had a number of process problems about 5 years ago, and so a bloke that I work with and he was going right off about it, and it was bothering me too. And I said, well, look, we've got the perfect opportunity here. So I grabbed a work improvement notice off the system. I filled it in and issued it to our quality manager, because that's where they go. And then he farmed it out to the department concerned. And so that happened. And then we found some other system glitches, like forms where the trainer would have to sign it twice. Like, why would he have one bit of paper where the staff member has to sign it twice? I put him in saying, I want a review of this paperwork, saying, because there's no point in signing it twice. Why can't it just be signed once? If you've got 40 of these to do in a day, why do we need to sign it twice? It adds no value to the document. And so it's about those type of continuous improvement things. Anyway, I started to get a bit nancy and started issuing more and then more. And then the person that they were going to got the shits and stopped responding. So my ultimate thing was I actually issued a work improvement notice on the work improvement notice system. Because the system had failed, because the quality manager wasn't following up to make sure that the people they were issued to were responding in an adequate time. So the quality manager had kind of dropped the ball. The people who they were going to had dropped the ball. So I hit him with a sharp stick. And the funny outcome was, which I still laugh about, was I actually took the work improvement notice off the website. It was just me being the ultimate arsehole and actually making them accountable, because the system was shit. And I got sick.
What did it say? Sack the quality manager and get a new one?
No, I just said there's an obvious breakdown in the work improvement notice system, because we're not getting responses from. There's been no follow up and from the quality with regard to the quality system. I worded it so it didn't implicate individuals. Yeah. But if you knew, they would pick up very quickly that it was a smack in the face for them.
Right to them.
And of course, the worst part about it is that when you issue a non-conformance, the register should get talked about at executive level. So back in my life as a quality manager at DECA, I actually presented every month a summary of the continuous improvement register to executives. So they actually got to review what non-conformances we got and what non-conformances we issued. So they actually got to see that as part of a monthly report. So as the quality manager, that was part of what I gave them. So the implications are quite, it's not just a document that a couple of people get to see. Management, actually, executive management get to see what's going on in the business. So I'm sure it was talked about with at high levels within the organisation about what a pain in the arse I was. Anyway, I don't care.
Is there any legal requirement with non-conformance?
No.
Yep.
No.
So it's just you improving your own business.
Yeah, that's right. Look, and in truthfulness, Paul, it's a really good question. In truthfulness, you should audit your own system. You should have an internal audit process in place.
Yep.
You shouldn't be relying on external auditors to come in and do it. In actual fact, with ISO 9000, there is built into that an internal audit process. So when they come in to audit your system, they want to see that you've been doing internal audits. So, and you probably find, Luke, with the document you've got in front of you, that's actually built into it.
Yeah, well, there's an internal audit that you can do. That's a pretty big audit, I'm assuming, that will tick the boxes. So you have everything hopefully pretty well covered if you do get an external audit. That's
right. And the point is that you're auditing your own system so that you're continually improving it.
Yeah.
So that when the external auditors come in, really is just a formal process for them. You've already taken care, or the quality manager has already taken care of the stuff inside the business.
Yeah.
So it just rolls on like that. But yeah, it is built into most of those quality type standards that there is an internal audit process, and it's in our agreement with WorkSafe that we have to do internal audits occasionally as well. So we're no different. So it's just a really good. It's about checking your own system, and really, when you do an internal audit, you should not always, but you should. That's where you can actually issue non-conformances internally. You can use non-conformances externally. You can use non-conformances internally. Now, I did it internally. We called them work improvement notice, but really it was just a non-conformance form. So I could issue that to a supplier, and I can issue that to an internal department. It's the same document. So does that answer the question, Paul? I hope.
Yep. Yep.
Beautiful. So there you go. I shut up for a while. You can have 3A, B3, C, 3D. So I'll have a look at those to make sure that if I get any nasty questions like I did before, I'm ready.
Before we move on there, is a pin the same or is it different?
Well, that's a very good question. I was thinking to myself, I might actually talk about pins, but I decided not to. Pins are exactly the same, Wayne, exactly the same. But the biggest single difference with a pin is there is a legal obligation on the person who receives it to comply with it.
Yeah.
Just because of WorkSafe?
No, it's actually written into the OHS Act.
Yeah, right.
So if I issue a pin to my workplace, which is a provisional improvement notice, which is a non-conformance report. It's just another word for a work improvement notice, non-conformance report or non-compliance report. That's really what it is. And if I issue one of those as a health and safety rep, then there's a legal obligation on the receiver to comply. They cannot ignore it. Whereas with a non-conformance report, really they can ignore it.
Yeah.
There's no legal binding. Wayne, so it was your Paul or Wayne at ours. It was Wayne was asked the question.
Wayne.
Yeah. So that's I actually, as I was talking, Wayne, I was actually had in my mind to talk about pins, but I thought I might confuse it because there's a legal side to pins.
Right.
So yeah, that's why I didn't bother. So thank you for raising it. But I'd actually thought about it and thought, no, I won't. But yeah, it's a good point because really it's exactly what it is.
So who can issue a pin?
Only trained health and safety representatives.
Yeah, right.
So people who've done the 5-day health and safety rep course. And look, it gets a bit technical, Paul, because they have to be duly elected health and safety reps. not
Yep.
just have done the health and safety rep course. I'm actually delivering one now face to face. I've got 2 managers in there who are doing the 5-day health and safety rep course, but when they finish, they are not health and safety reps
Okay.
because they haven't been duly elected by their peers.
Yep.
They've been nominated by their bosses.
Yep.
Because it's a bit of a process, because the Act says that they've got to be duly elected health and safety reps, and when they're duly elected, once they've done their 5 days training, they can then issue a PIN.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah.
A bit of a strange example, but if all of management got together as a work group and nominated a manager to be a health and safety rep through a duly elected process, then yes, they then become a health and safety rep, even though they're a manager. But it's around the election process that determines whether
Because
someone is
in construction, we used to vote them in.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Duly elected.
Yep.
So if a group of managers got together and duly elected one of their own, and they did the 5-day health and safety rep course, then they are technically a health and safety rep.
Yeah.
The determination on the
quite militant union people.
Yeah, it's the election process that really determines who is a health and safety rep.
Yep.
Now, even if you get picked to be a health and safety rep, you're not really a health and safety rep until you've either done the 5-day course or a Cert 4. Is that right?
Nothing to do. You can't issue a PIN if you've got a Cert 4,
Can't
mate.
issue anything, but can you still act as a health and safety rep for your
No.
company?
Not under the official term of being a health and safety rep. Where am I? Health and safety rep. No, you can't.
Yep.
No, that is about 20% of the Occupational Health and Safety Act is put aside to health and safety reps.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really quite a distinct formal process. Like, to give you an idea, if someone is duly elected as a health and safety rep, the only way they can be removed by the boss is for them to go to the magistrate's court and get a court order to remove them. Because they've been elected under the Act, the only way to remove them is by a legal process. So that's how formal it is. It really is quite a very, very formal process.
Yeah.
So 3A is pretty straightforward. 3B is not. Oh God, how am I going to do that?
Haven't got there yet.
Wow. I reckon the rest of your night's going to be filled in doing this.
Oh, thanks.
You can't do 3B, and 3C and 3D kind of relate to 3B.
I'll just skip them.
3B requires you to do assess a contractor in a simulated workplace. For those that have got real workplaces, for those that have got real workplaces, that's not. You could probably do that, but
What, I haven't got a real workplace?
yeah, I was going to say.
I'm never there when there are contractors.
Thanks, mate.
There. Really hard when you're out on the road all the time.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think of. I'm sitting here looking at it, reading it, trying to think of a workaround. That's my job.
I
Have
don't
fun
think
with
we're allowed to
that.
have contractors at work. Michael, are you allowed at my work yet?
What was that, Deb?
Are you allowed at the Pudo yet?
Depends,
Oh,
but not really,
I didn't think
Only in
so.
emergencies, huh?
unless there's a big
Well,
breakdown.
Yeah,
I was
you're
actually
not
there
allowed to
today
know.
mowing the lawns, actually.
What?
Yeah.
You serious?
Yeah, that's emergent. That's pretty essential.
Really? I mowed my lawn today. That was
Holy
the
shit,
thing.
Debbie, you got to
Whoa.
a bucket of water.
Yeah, you can't hear properly.
Are you drinking a bit of bloody white wine there, Deb, or something?
No, I'm a easy, so that's just out in the middle of nowhere.
That sounded terrible, Deb. You have no idea what it sounds. Well, you'll get to hear it on the recording. You'll know exactly what it sounds like. Here's my workaround, everybody, for 3B, which will impact on 3C and 3D. I will develop a simulated workplace tomorrow, and I'll shoot it out to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And in this simulation, there will be a contractor who's not doing the right thing.
So where are you sending that email or what?
Yeah, I'll send it out by email, mate. Yeah.
Yep.
I like to be challenged. I like to do stuff in a rush. Gets me adrenaline up, gets the blood pressure up, elevates my blood sugar, makes my hair fall out.
Truck in Melbourne.
Makes my hair fall out. Actually, I reckon that's what's wrong with this room. There's far too many blokes with too much hair. I'm feeling overwhelmed. It's the only follically challenged bloke in the room.
Been for a while though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, about 40 years, 45 years.
Yeah.
It's overrated anyway.
Lost half of mine.
Is it that? Is that like Wayne, was it?
Yeah.
That's Ryan saying he lost half his.
It's the reverse mud guards.
Shiny on top and shit underneath. God, look, I reckon the best one I've ever heard is what a bloke looked at me one day and says, you know, Trev, your wig's on inside out. You got to think about that for a minute. And the same bloke said to me, he said, you know, you should get a tattoo of a rabbit on your head. I said, why? He said, well, this will look like a hare. Every now and then you hear some good ones.
So where are we at? Which one are we doing?
Well, 3B, I'm going to have to write a scenario for Wayne.
And then that will flow into 3C, so we can do
Yeah.
3A.
Yeah, just do 3A now, and then I'll do the rest. Well, I won't do it for you, but
Damn.
I may even. Well, 4A rolls in from 3B, 3C, 3D. Jesus Christ. Oh, okay. You got to do a verbal report as part of 4A. I have to have your finger out, aren't I?
Should have done all this one.
Activities, they're not even the assessment.
No, 4A is requiring a simulated workplace. You must report the non-compliance and the results of your in a spoken conversation with a person representing your work manager. You should be clear in the instance of WHS non-compliance. Oh, there you go. I'll be able to have a look at. Oh, we can do that one in class, 4B. Use breakout rooms for that. Okay. So just do 3A now. And then I'll do that tomorrow. And that will roll into 3B, 3C, 3D, 3F, 3G, 3H, 3K, 3L, 3M.
What are you saying? Good night.
No, hell no. I want to try and get the slides finished out if I can.
I thought you nearly did. You must only have a couple of pages left. .1. Yeah, you must only have.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the end. So.
Yeah, because I thought we'd discussed non-compliance and whatnot, which is the end of my book. Yeah, look, I'm just slipping through. And look, I'm just, if everyone can heads up and look at the slides and leave just 3 out for a minute, I'll get through the slides. This slide here is actually talking about what we were just talking about making a formal record of the non-compliance for the organisation. So that's basically what I was talking about, that having that non-conformance register, just to keep the process formal, because some organisations will actually ask to see your non-conformance register or your non-conformance, yeah, where all the non-conformances have been recorded. So in the ideal world, you would if you were to issue a non-conformance to an organisation, they should record it in their register. You would record it in your register. So if you look at a paper-based trail, you can see how it all links together. So I issue the non-conformance to ABC. ABC receive it, put that in their own non-conformance register, and then they go out and do an investigation. They make recommendations, make changes. Those get put back into their conformance register, which then the document comes back to me, and then I put it into mine. So it closes the loop. Does that make sense? Nod yes or shake no.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
For those of you that are in bigger organisations, you actually might find you'll probably have that. You may have that around somewhere. Somebody sitting in a corner in a dark room.
Yeah, in Melbourne.
May have some of that stuff laying around. I used to be that person in the dark room. I know all about that.
Pretty sure we don't have them here.
That's just about keeping up to date with OHS laws. I don't know where you need to do that. I think we've already touched on sitting around a table and talking about the non-compliances. Do I need to spend time talking about that?
Nah.
Just in case you didn't know that. Are people looking at the slides, or are they working on the work? I can only see half of you.
I'm looking at the slides.
Bit of both.
Yep, that's okay. I'll
Active listening.
what this one's talking about is basically if the contractor doesn't respond in an appropriate way about ramping it up inside your own organisation.
No,
You're just got the role of, as the OHS coordinator, manager, supervisor. So if you can't get a satisfactory outcome to the issuing of a non-compliance, then it needs to get ramped up inside your business to see, to higher level executive to see what they want to do about it, and where they want to take it. Because really, it becomes if you've issued a non-conformance for a WHS or an OHS matter, and then they haven't responded, or the response they've given hasn't met your expectations, where do you go with that? And look, I spoke already about that contractor we had on site at Unilever who wouldn't comply. What the process was for me, I went to my boss with it and said, look, I've spoken to this bloke. He asked me, what's your recommendations? I said, I think we should ban him off site. And he said, I'm happy to support that. So that was a phone call to the engineering department, asked the manager to come over for a meeting. He rocked on over and we explained our position on it. That this guy was no longer allowed to come back on site because of so many non-conformances, basically. This boss had been notified in the past that this guy was non-conforming. So it didn't come as a huge surprise. I think it was a bit surprised that we took the step to ban him off site. I think that came as a bit of a shock. But he knew this guy. We'd had trouble with this guy in the past. So that's kind of, as the OHS coordinator, you've only got an X amount of level of authority within the organisation. So, if there's people are not complying with non-conformances, then it needs to be ramped up.
So before it gets to that, before you terminate them, you'd bring them in for a meeting and have a. Obviously,
I did that. I did that with this bloke.
Yeah.
I did that with this bloke. Yep. A number of times. He was given more chances than what he should have had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the boss knew about it because the boss would get a phone call saying, look, ABC, Bill's been here again, and guess what? He hasn't done it. Oh, Jesus Christ, I'll talk to him when he gets back, and you get sick and tired of listening to it.
Mm.
Basically, you got an expectation of your workers to behave. You expect the contractors will behave too. Yeah. Look, it comes as a bit of a shock to him. I mean, they didn't terminate him; they gave him other work to do.
Yeah. But
it basically meant, look, for all I know, the day I walked out of the business is probably the day he may have gone back in there. I don't know. And they might have thought I was the arsehole, and I don't know. But that's just part of the gig.
Yeah.
So at what times do you evaluate? You do it pre-works, during works, post-works. So that's really where you need to evaluate it. You make a determination on when they tender for the work, whether you're going to engage them. When they're on site, before they start doing any work, you go and have a look to see if they're doing and brought with them what they say they should be doing. And then you do random observations. You could do planned observations where you notify them you're going to be on site. Those sort of planned observations was you go in there to look at their documentation. But for any sort of works, you can do that whereas it's not notified. Because, I mean, giving them notice you're going to be on site to audit them is giving them a free kick.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife in her family daycare business gets planned and unplanned visits. They'll notify her they're coming, or they'll just show up unannounced.
Yeah, I do that sometimes.
Yeah. Look, it's good. It's good, I think, to play the game and give them notice that you're going to be out there on this day at this time to do an observation, or to look at their paperwork, or to look at their swims, or to look at even their non-conformance register to see if they're doing any internal auditing themselves, to see what non-conformances they've actually picked up themselves, if they've got that process in place. It could be as simple as doing that. And then, of course, you then evaluate them at the end of the job to say, how many non-conformances did they have? Did they get the work done on time? Did they do it within cost? Did they have any workplace injuries? Did they have any lost time injuries? All that sort of stuff you can evaluate at the end of the contract, and then make a determination about whether you get them back again.
Yeah, we had WorkSafe turn up on our site last week.
Yep.
And they went through, they just picked us out of their hat and said, right, we're going to do an audit on these. So, and then they just walked up to one of our apprentices and just grabbed him and walked around site and made sure that everything was done right. And
Did they go into the office and do a paper trail first?
yeah, they did. Yeah, they went through all their swims, made sure he was signed onto them. Everyone else was signed onto them and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so they followed the process I always talk about. Come on site, identify themselves, look at the paperwork, then go outside and grab somebody and then show me how you do things. And then they'll look at the paperwork and say, yes, they did everything. No, they didn't do anything. If they didn't do everything, what they issue a non-conformance report, but what it's called is an improvement notice.
Yeah.
Which is different to provisional improvement notice.
Yeah.
They issue an improvement notice, which is a little bit more formal again. So
we got the all clear, so that was good. So
that's good. No improvement. They would have been unhappy about that because they like issuing improvement notices.
Yeah. So no, I'm pretty happy about that one. So
yeah,
got the all clear.
They can be your friend or they can be your enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First impressions, my opinion is if they like how the site's set up and whatnot, they don't seem to dig as deep.
Look, I can show you a video that I use on the health and safety rep course where I think there's 5 different work safe inspectors talking to them. 4 of them are from building construction, or 3 of them are from building construction, and every single of all of those 3, they all say exactly the same thing up front. We make our determination about what we're going to find based on what we're looking at when we pull up out front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 100%. If it's messy and everything looks unorganised, well, you want to stay there longer and find something.
Yeah, but if everything's neat and tidy and there's no rubbish laying around, and then they say, well, in their minds, they know that the business is that's how they operate.
Yeah.
I mean, when we built this house I'm sitting in, Gary Lewis or GJ Lewis Homes built it 25 years ago. And he was absolutely anal. He would come around regularly and make sure the site was spotlessly clean. And I mean spotlessly clean. And he would ream people for not doing it. If like the roof tilers come in and left all the broken tiles on the ground without putting them into the bins, he would go nuts. Go nuts. Because I think he realised the importance of, well, a clean work site is a safe work site. So even back then he was onto it.
Yeah, that's good.
So, I mean, that's just some of the stuff I just finished talking about. Was some of the stuff you can judge them on: the cost management, time management, standard of work, the standard of their personnel, including their subcontractors, how well they manage the contract, whether they were timely for meetings. There's a whole range of stuff you could assess them on. They need to know this up front when you engage them. This is the stuff they're going to be assessed against. So it's a bit like me handing you the assessment on day 1 of this training. You know what you're going to be assessed against. You know what you're up for, and they should be the same. Relationships like interpersonal between you and them, their compliance with OHS, how reliable they were. There's nothing worse than contractors not being on site when they say they're being on site. That's quite frustrating. Their industrial relations, how well they manage the environment. From an OHS perspective, we don't necessarily need to get involved in that, but how well, rubbish their community relations, whether they're abusing their neighbours or what they're doing, non-conformance issues, and their suitability for future work. And it's as simple as that. I mean, it's nothing difficult or hard about that. Easy to read, easy to see.
Pretty simple, yeah.
Yeah. And you've just given them a simple rating out of 4.
That's pretty good feedback for them, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually haven't seen one of them.
That's when you're doing this stuff, that this is the stuff you picked on. For those who've done training with me before, would be familiar with my ones that my doing these. This is one I added. This is not theirs. It's just a really simple checklist for the job.
What's the cost? Is that they were too expensive?
Well, they came in over budget. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They said it was going to cost 10 grand, and we finished up paying 15 or something like that.
Smash you with varies.
Yeah. And look, if you've got a contract, sometimes there needs to be a variation to a contract.
Mm.
You know, sometimes things change. Like COVID-19, there will be all sorts of variations of contracts running around now for extensions on timelines and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, we
Because
put a clause at the bottom of our tender.
because exactly that. I mean, you just don't know. I sent out a quote to somebody today, and basically that was, you know, basically this is the price now. It'll be reviewed when we can actually, because it required face-to-face. It'll be reviewed and we'll confirm as we get closer to being able to look you in the eye.
Mm.
So that's our life at the moment.
I think I'll be putting on the bottom of my quotes from now on, excludes COVID-19.
Yeah. We're about to do a bit of face-to-face training with the people who are making the face masks here in Shep. They've got 59 million face masks to make for the federal government before December.
Wow.
They normally make 12 million a year.
Friggin' hell.
They still have the army in there doing it?
That was a bit of a furphy, Lynn, I've got to tell you. I was out there talking to them, might have been at the end of the week before last. What the army did was come on site, took away one of their old machines, took it to Bandiana to the engineering area, totally refurbished it, made new bits because you couldn't get bits for it anymore, so they had to manufacture new bits on lathe and all that sort of stuff. Totally refurbished it, put it back together, brought it back, and put it back in place, and that was the end of their
their involvement.
Yeah, they weren't there working the machines at all. That was a bit of a furphy.
Yeah.
Making them look good.
Oh, that's what I thought. They'd have to retrain them all on everything. Certainly not
I
within
could
their
almost say
normal-
that military people aren't that smart, but I wouldn't say that. They'd never be offensive to you. No, I'm being sarcastic, Lynn, you know that. No, that's all they did. They've actually employed, for those that are local to Shep, Gooj Dry Cleaning has laid off a lot of people, so they've actually employed them. And one of the cafes in Shep is shut down, so they've employed a lot of people from there. So they were running basically 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. They're now running 24/7. I think they've got 6 new machines coming. They're all being manufactured in Echuca. To pump it. The biggest issue they've got is their supply of their raw material. Because it comes
where are they getting it from?
overseas.
Yeah, how are they getting it?
Probably China.
Private jet?
No, I don't know. But that's when I was out there talking to the ops guy. Because I said, how are you going for raw materials? He looked at me and just shook his head. He said, that's our single biggest issue. Because they also make hairnets as well. And a really big part of the contract, which is going to be new to them, is actually making the disposable aprons as well. So there's builders in there. When I was out there, there's builders in there building a whole new floor to put all these 6 new machines in. They've just leased the warehouse next door, and they're extending their current warehouse by about 6 bays.
So did they get some sort of funding to put all this extra money into
your
it?
taxpayer money, mate.
Yeah. Cool.
Scott's paying.
Yes. So much.
We're paying. We're paying. So
Gordon McKernan.
Kids are paying.
So I'm heading out there in the next week or two to do some OHS training across the 3 shifts.
So how does all that go when this is supposedly over?
I don't know.
I suppose they've got another couple of years before that happens, huh?
Yeah, I reckon it'll go on. It'll go on. China will develop something new.
Yeah. Something else to keep us home.
They're already working on it.
Working on the next animal to eat.
What can we pick on next time? We give the bats a run this time. What can we use next time?
Well, they had swine flu, had the pigs.
Yeah, you had the pigs,
And the bird flu.
And the birds, done the chooks, done
What
the
did
bats.
they call this one? Bat flu.
So what do you reckon I'll pick on next?
Cats and dogs.
Well, there is a cat flu already.
Apparently pigs can get COVID too.
Well, they're very similar in genetics to us.
And cats.
Oh, who cares?
Yeah.
Actually caught a cat in a cat trap last week. Pretty happy with myself.
Probably a domestic cat, a good one.
Well, when I've done it in the past, they haven't found their way home again. This one had a collar on it.
Had
So
to let him go.
I was in a bit of a bind. So I held him over for 24 hours, let him have a little bit of think about what he was doing in our backyard, and then released him out the gate.
Didn't feed him, stirred him up a bit.
With a stern talking to. Let him know the error of his way. So he got a stern talking to, and told that he's not welcome in our backyard anymore.
Did he understand? Did
Well,
he reply?
He took off pretty quickly. He was decidedly happy about being in there for 24 hours. I can give you the picture. Because the cat trap's not that big.
Uncomfy 24 hours.
Yeah. Yep. Nowhere to wee, nowhere to poo.
Okay.
No food, no water.
No.
Would have been cold.
Yeah, I hope so. He probably was after I washed him down to make sure he was, because he pooed in there and was a bit diarrhea, so I hosed the bottom of the cage down to make sure it was okay. So yeah, I don't know what's going to come next. Anyway, I reckon we talked about this preferred supplier list. There's 4, and there we are at 25 to 9. So I will undertake to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and write a scenario, a simulated workplace, and I'll try to have it to you by about 8:30 in the morning.
I'll be at work by then, but thanks.
All right.
That's my undertaking.
Don't worry
I
about it.
don't think I'm going to look at it at 8:30.
You'll be up at Sparrows
Trust
Park.
me, if I don't do it, it
Won't
won't get done. So I'm a morning person. I function better in the morning. So I'm better to do it then than to leave it later. And then I know it's done. You can get on with your work, because next week technically is our last week.
God. That's 2 lots of assessments I've got to catch up on.
So any questions? This was only a 4-weeker one. This one, it was not too bad.
Yeah, that's cool.
So if you come prepared next week to do that bit of a talk, was it 2C?
B, C,
D and E.
or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Three B, C.
No, the 3 C and Ds we'll do it at a later date. We won't be able to, we might fit them in the next week, or I doubt it.
Yeah.
I'll see how I go. I'll have a closer look at it and give you some feedback.
So it won't be until about 7 next week.
Okay. What are you doing, Deb? You working nights or days?
She's not with us now.
No. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
hopefully I didn't confuse stuff too much. And I'll undertake to have that stuff out to you in the morning so you can work on it.
All right then. Good night, everyone.
See you,
All
guys.
right.
All right, cheers.
See you later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, Deb's back.
Sort of.